Hello everybody, welcome to this instruction video. In this video I'd like to show you part 3 of Rozeta. Rozeta is the Scheepjes 2019 and it's been designed by Tatjana from Lillebjorn Crochet. I have the Our Tribe version here, and in this color version we'll be making this band here in part 3. Of course in other color versions you'll be making the same pattern but different color placement. So what we're doing here is we're really finishing that first center part of the blanket. You can really see the heart pattern is completed now, and here the diamond patterns are completed. So this is part 3. That's what we're going to be doing. I have an Our Tribe kit, which means I'm using Scheepjes Our Tribe yarn, and I'm using this in combination with a 3.5mm hook. There's also a color crafter kit. You'll be using a 4mm hook with those kits. And please do double check that you use the right color yarn at the right points for your kit. So I'll take you again step by step through every color change and through every stitch pattern for part 3. So thank you for watching. I hope it's a useful video for you. Start with the chain 2, as always. In the first stitch we make 2 trebles. So 1, 2 trebles. The next stitch, 1 treble, and here in the last 2 stitches a treble, 2 together. 1 and 2, and now we're going to change colors, and you're going to change colors to yarn B. No matter which kit you have, you now have yarn B on your hook. And so there we go. So this is yarn B. In the next stitches you have 3 stitches here. Those 3. Going to work 2 trebles in each of those. That's quite an increase you're going to work there. That's 1, 2, and then 2 in the next, 2 and 2 in the last. So 1, 2, and then we change colors to yarn A again. So in those 3 stitches you've worked 2 trebles each in yarn B. I'm going to start with a treble 2 together in the first 2 stitches. 1, 2, and then take them off, followed by 1 treble, and then the last stitch here work 2 trebles. So 1 and 2, and then change colors. I just need the yarn tail on that side. There we go. And then change colors to yarn B. I'm going to start with a treble 2 together, 1 treble, and then again a treble 2 together. It's a treble 2 together, followed by 1 treble, and here the last 2 stitches again a treble 2 together. And then we change colors to yarn A. In the first stitch, 2 trebles, 1, 2, the next stitch 1 treble, last 2 stitches a treble 2 together. 1, 2, and then change colors to yarn B. You have 1 stitch there in yarn B. On that 1 stitch you work 3 trebles. So that's 1, 2, 3 trebles, and then we change back to yarn A. You're going to do the same on this side as on that side, but mirror image. So we start with a treble 2 together. 1, 2, then we take them off. 1 treble in the next stitch, and here in the last stitch 2 trebles. 1, 2 trebles in that 1 stitch, and then we change colors to yarn B. Here again on the first 2 and the last 2 a treble 2 together, and in the middle 1 treble. 2, and then 1 treble, and over the last 2 again a treble 2 together, and then change colors to yarn A again. Here again the same pattern, so that's a 2 trebles in the first, 1 and then a treble 2 together. So it's 2, 1 and 0 basically, because you're doing a decrease. So that's 2 trebles, in the middle you make 1 treble, and then you work a decrease. 1, 2, and then we change colors to yarn B. Here you have 3 trebles again, and each of those work 2 trebles. That's quite the increase here. Just need a bit of yarn. So that's 2 trebles in each stitch. So that's 1, 2. And here again 2 trebles, and in the third stitch also work 2 trebles. 1, 2, and then change colors to yarn A. Almost at the end of the repeat, treble 2 together, treble 2 together, followed by 1 treble, and in the last stitch 2 trebles. 2 trebles, and then change to yarn B. On the longer stretch, I'm going to start with a decrease. So the first 2 stitches and the last 2 stitches is a decrease, so treble 2 together. Then in the middle you have 9 trebles. We're going to work 1 on each. First stitch is a treble 2 together, followed by 9 trebles. And oh, come on. There we go. 1, 2, continue until you have 9. This is 3, and the last one. There we go. Last 2 stitches, work a treble 2 together, and then we change to yarn A. Which is slightly twisted. There we go. Yarn A. Now it's quite a long repeat. You need to do 5 more of them. And then here, after your last stitches, go back to yarn A and then close with the first stitch with a slip stitch. Round 28, again a chain 2 with yarn A, then in the first stitch, this way you're currently in, 2 trebles. 1, 2. The next stitch, 1 treble, over the last 2 stitches a treble 2 together. And then we also change colors. 2, and if I then find my yarn, we change to yarn B. There we go. In the first stitch, 2 trebles. 1, 2, 1 treble in the next stitch, and then 2 trebles in the next stitch. So it's 2, 1, 2. Okay, so you 2, 1, 2. Now, and then in the following 2 stitches you do 1 treble. That's 1, and oh, that's the wrong yarn tail. I still have that from the last round. And 1, and in the last stitch here 2 trebles. 1, 2, and we change colors to yarn A. There we go. Similar as there, but in a mirror image. We start with a treble 2 together, 2, followed by 1 treble, and here in the last stitch 2 trebles. 1, 2, and then we change colors to yarn B. You have here 3 stitches. Going to do a treble 3 together on those 3 stitches. That's 1 leg, then come to the next stitch with a yarn over, take off 2, and then come to the next stitch, take off 2, 3 stitches and the first loops, or 4 loops on your hook, which you then take off in one go. This side the same as that side, but mirrored, so it's 2 trebles in the first stitch, 1, 2, 1 treble in the next stitch, and here over the last 2 we work a treble 2 together. And I just getting more yarn. we go. Then a treble 2 together over these last 2. And then we change colors to yarn B. For yarn B, going to do quite a few increases. 2 trebles in the first, 1 in the middle, and 2 trebles in the last stitch. That's 2 trebles in the first stitch, 1 treble in the middle, and 2 trebles in the last stitch. And then we change colors to yarn A again. Here the same. Again, we start with a treble 2 together. Two, which you take off, followed by 1 treble, and here in the last stitch 2 trebles in the 1 stitch, which we then all take off in one go. Here again 3 stitches, work a treble 3 together over those 3. 2 and 3. There go 3 legs, which you're going to take off with color A. Here again the same as there, but mirrored. So we start with 2 trebles in the first stitch, 1 treble in the next stitch, and in the last 2 stitches work a treble 2 together, and then we make the last change again. Not the last one, but we change again. There we go. Over these stitches, very similar as the first time we had this number of stitches. So in the first one you work 2 trebles, and 2 trebles in the first stitch, 1 treble in the next, then 2 trebles, so that's again this 2, 1, 2, 2 trebles in each of the next stitches, so that's 1, 1, just 1 treble, and 1 treble, and then here on the last stitch you work 2 trebles. 1, 2, and then we change colors to yarn A again. In the last bit here of yarn A, this is the last part of yarn A for the first repeat. Start with a treble 2 together, followed by 1 treble, and then here in the last stitch you work 2 trebles. Just 1 and 2, which you then take off in one go. Now the last bit of the repeat, these stitches here in yarn B, start with a treble 2 together, treble 2 together, and then we work 7 trebles, and that will bring you to the other side, where you again then finish with a treble 2 together over the last 2 stitches. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If all went well, you now have 2 stitches left where you work a treble 2 together. And then change to yarn A. And then you're at the start of the next repeat, because here you start the next repeat. So everything we've just done, go all the way around. So you need to do this 5 more times, and after your last treble 2 together, close on your first stitch with yarn A. Round 29, going to start again with a chain 2, which is not a stitch, and then here in the first stitch work 2 trebles. 1 and 2. Following stitch 1 treble, and over the last 2 stitches a treble 2 together, and 2, and then change colors to yarn B. And there we go. Over these next stitches from yarn B, in the first stitch we work 2 trebles. 1, 2, it's 2 trebles, followed by 3. No, sorry, I'm just arguing with my yarn here. There we go. Followed by 3 trebles, and then 2 in the next, and then 3 trebles and 2 in the next. So we've got 2, then 3, 2, 3, 2. That's the rhythm here. So now we work 3 trebles, 1 in every stitch. 1, 2, 3. In the next stitch work 2 trebles. So 1, 2, and then we're going to work that little tiny repeat again. So that's 3 trebles, 1 in every stitch for 3 stitches. So that's 1 and 2 and 3, and on the last stitch 2 trebles again. So 1, 2, and then change colors to yarn A. Yarn A, slightly longer stretch here because you've got more stitches here. I'm going to start with a treble 2 together over the first 2 stitches. That's a treble 2 together, followed by 5 trebles, which is going to bring you to the other side here. So that's 1, and this is 2, 3, 4, and 5, and here over the last 2 stitches another treble 2 together. 1, 2, and then we swap colors again to yarn B. Just keep turning my work. For yarn B, in the first 2 stitches work 2 trebles. 1, 2 trebles. The next 3 stitches work 1 treble on each, and then in the last stitch you again work 2 trebles. 2, 3, and then here in the last stitch work 2 trebles. 1 and 2, and then we change colors to yarn A. I'm just rotating everything again. Here we're going to do the same on yarn A as we did on that side. So it's starting with a treble 2 together. So 1 over the first 2 stitches, treble 2 together, followed by 5 trebles, 1 on every stitch for the next 5 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trebles, and then here the last 2 stitches have a treble 2 together. 1, 2, and then you change colors back to yarn B. There we go. For yarn B, going to do the same here as we did 2 bits ago. On the first stitch you work 2 trebles, then 1 on each stitch for the next 3 stitches, so that's 3 trebles in total. 2, 3. The next stitch work 2 trebles again, 2, 3 trebles, 1 on every stitch. 1, 2, 3, and then here in the last stitch work 2 trebles again, and then we change to yarn A. So 1, 2, and we change to yarn A. These 4 stitches we start with a treble 2 together, followed by 1 treble, and the last stitch here 2 trebles. 2, and then we take them off again and by changing to yarn B. So I rotate everything again. The circle is getting nice and big. The last stitches of the repeat, and then you can start everything all over again. I'm going to start with a treble 2 together on the first 2 stitches. 1, 2, treble 2 together, followed by 5 trebles, 1 on every stitch, 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5 trebles, and on your last 2 stitches you work a treble 2 together. So 1, 2, and then we change again to yarn A. And there we go, yarn A. Now what you've just done is you work the full repeat. So you're going to do everything 5 more times. And here after your last treble 2 together, close with yarn A on your first stitch. Round 30. I'm going to start with a chain 2. In the first stitch 2 trebles, so this is very similar to the previous rounds. 2 trebles, followed by 1 treble in the next stitch, and then the last 2 stitches here a treble 2 together. 1 and 2, and then we change colors to yarn B. Middle stretch here in the first stitch 2 trebles. That's 1, 2. And then the next 3 stitches 1 treble on each. So that's 1, 2, 3. Stitch after 2 trebles in 1 stitch. That's 1 and 2, and in the next 6 stitches going to work 1 treble on each. So that's 1, 2, 3. Oh dear, need to yarn over that. 3, 4, 5, and 6. There we go. 6 trebles. In the last stitch work 2 trebles, and then we change again to yarn A. And then we change to yarn A. There we go. With yarn A, work a treble 2 together on the first 2 stitches. 2. The center 3 going to work 1 treble on each, so that's 3 trebles. 1, 2, 3 trebles, and the last 2 stitches again a treble 2 together. So 1, 2, which we take off for yarn B. Just move everything a bit. Yarn B, 2 trebles in the first stitch. 1, 2. The next 5 stitches work 1 treble on each. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then on the last stitch here work 2 trebles, and then change to yarn A. 2 trebles on that last stitch, and then we change to yarn A again. There we go. This part is the same as the previous part, so let's start with a treble 2 together, followed by a treble on the next 3 stitches. So that's 1, 2, and 3, and in the last 2 stitches we work a treble 2 together. 1, 2, which we then change to yarn B. And there's an emergency vehicle just racing past here. I hope there's nothing serious. On these long stretch of stitches, I'm going to start with 2 trebles in the first stitch, 3 trebles, one in each of the next 3. So that's 1 in the next stitch is 2, and in the last stitch is 3. So 2 trebles in the first stitch and then 1 on each of the next 3. The next stitch here we work 2 trebles. That's 1, 2, and then on the next 6 work 1 on each. So this is the same as we had this piece also just a few bits earlier. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then here on the last stitch you have 1 stitch left, you work 2 trebles, and then we change to yarn A. That's 1, 2, and then we change to yarn A. And just move everything a bit. Almost finished with the first repeat. On the first 2 stitches work a treble 2 together. That's 1, 2, 1 treble in the next stitch, and 2 trebles in the last stitch, and 2, and then we change to yarn B. The last bit of the repeat, start with a treble 2 together in the first 2 stitches, followed by a treble in the next 3. 1, 2, and 3. Your last 2 stitches here is a treble 2 together, and then we change to yarn A. And we change to yarn A. There we go. And that's the full repeat, everything we've done. So you need to do everything 5 more times. And here, after you've done your last repeat, you're going to change to yarn A, close on your first stitch. And at that point you can, if you have the color crafter version, you can cut yarn B, because you're going to continue with yarn C. But if you have the Our Tribe like I have, you're just going to continue using the same 2 colors. Round 31, yarn A on your hook, start with a chain 2. In the first stitch 2 trebles, and take the thread with you from yarn B. If you have the color crafter, you'll have cut yarn B, and you'll be doing this round with yarn C, 1 treble in the next stitch, and over the last 2 stitches a treble 2 together. 1, 2, and then change colors. If you have Our Tribe kit, it's yarn B. If you have a color crafter kit, it's yarn C. This round, or this stretch, is a bit of a longer stretch. I'm going to start the first stitch 2 trebles. This 1, 2, and then over the next 9 stitches going to work a treble on each. It's a bit of a longer stretch. 9 trebles, so that's 1, 2, this is 3, and 9. 9 trebles. The next stitch work 2 trebles. That's 1 and 2. The following 3 stitches work 1 treble on each. 1, 2, and the last one here, 3. There we go, 3 trebles, and on that last stitch there work 2 trebles, and then change to yarn A. 1, 2, and then change to yarn A. Yarn A is just a short bit here. You're going to work a treble 2 together on the first 2 stitches and the last 2 stitches. In the middle you have 1 stitch left. We're going to work 1 treble on there. So 1 and 2, the treble 2 together, then 1 treble on the next stitch, and your last 2 stitches there, that's a treble 2 together again. 1, 2, and then you change colors to yarn B or C, depending on your kit. In the first stitch, work 2 trebles, so 1, 2 trebles. Then you're going to work 7 trebles, and here in the last one you're going to work 2 again. 7 trebles. So 1, 2, and number 7 will bring you just about to the other side. That's 2, 3, and 7. There we go. So that's 7 trebles, and the last stitch 2 trebles. 1, 2, and then we change colors back to yarn A. First 2 and the last 2 again a treble 2 together, and in the middle 1 treble. So this is the same as on the other side, on that side there. Then 1 treble, here the last 2 stitches again a treble 2 together, and 2. And then we take them off, changing to yarn B or C. Here we have again a longer stretch, 2 trebles in the first stitch, and 2, followed by 9 trebles. Let me just, there we go. So that's the first of 9, so that's 1, 2, this is similar to a bit we had before, 3, and 9. 9 trebles, 2 trebles in the next stitch, that's 1 and 2. Now with the next 3 stitches, if I recall correctly, we work a treble in each. So 1, 2, 3, and in the last stitch work 2 trebles. 1, 2, which we're then going to change to yarn A. First 2 stitches a treble 2 together, and 2, going to take off, then 1 treble, here finally in the last stitch 2 trebles. And then just for the last bit of the repeat, we change back to yarn B or C. small bit here, and then we're at the beginning again of the next repeat. On the first 2 stitches, treble 2 together, which we're then going to take off, 1 treble in the next stitch. Here, these last 2 is a treble 2 together again. And then change to yarn A. There we go. And now you've done the repeat once, you need to do it 5 more times. And after your these last stitches here, close on your first stitch with yarn A with a slip stitch. Round 32, I'm going to start with the chain 2, and then as always in the first stitch 2 trebles. So 1 and 2, and the next stitch 1 treble, and in the last 2 stitches here a treble 2 together. And then we change to yarn B. If you have the Color Crafter kit, this is yarn C. There we go. You're now going to do, well actually you've got a long stretch here, all these stitches. In the first stitch you're going to work 2 trebles. It's 1 and 2. And then on the next 17 stitches, that's all of these stitches, you're going to work 1 treble on each. That's quite a long stretch, so that's 1, 2, continue until you have 17, 3, 4, and treble number 17. That's 17 trebles. Then you should of course change colors to yarn A. If you go on that long stretch, you can totally just forget to change colors. So change colors to yarn A. You have here 3 stitches, work a treble on each of those. So that's 1, 2, and 3, and then you change colors back to C or B, depending on your kit. On these stitches here, in the first stitch we're going to work 2 trebles. So 1, 2, so 2 trebles in that first stitch, followed by 9 trebles, and then 2 again in the last position. So that's 1, 2, continue until you have 9, then you'll have 1 stitch left. 9 trebles, and you have 1 stitch left. You're going to work 2 trebles on that last stitch. So that's 1, 2, and then change colors to yarn A. Here again only 3 stitches from yarn A, work a treble on each of those. That's 1, 2, 3, and then we swap to yarn B. Here again a very long stretch of stitches, going to work 17 trebles on the first stitches. So 1 on every stitch, 17, and that'll bring you to the other side, and on that last position you'll work 2 trebles. It's 2, 3, continue until you have 17, 4, and 17. There you go. So you've now worked 17 trebles. In that last stitch, work 2 trebles and then change to yarn A. So 1, 2, and then we change to yarn A. On the next stitches from yarn A, I'm going to start with a treble 2 together, and 2, 1 treble in the stitch after, and in the last position here 2 trebles. That's 1 and 2, and then we change to yarn B or C. You have here 3 stitches in yarn B. We're going to work a treble 3 together over those 3 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3. So it's just the 1 stitch, and then you change back to yarn A. And that's the end of the repeat unit, so that means here your next stitch here is going to be the start of the next repeat unit, in which you'll work 2 trebles in this first stitch. So what we've just done, do this 5 more times, and here after your last treble 3 together, change to yarn A, and then close on your first stitch with a slip stitch. Round 33, I'm going to start with a chain 2, as always. Now just a note, you might go autopilot here and do 2 trebles in that first stitch. That's not correct. Here we're going to do 1 treble in the first stitch. So be careful here that you don't go autopilot. So 1 treble in the first stitch and 1 treble in the next stitch. And then a treble 2 together over the last 2 stitches. 1, 2, and then change to yarn B or C. In the first stitch, going to work 2 trebles. 1, 2 trebles in that first stitch, and then 1 stitch in all of these. That's 18 trebles going to work. That will bring you then to the other side. So work 18 trebles and 18. There we go. 18 trebles. Oh, and of course change yarn too. See, that's what happens when you're doing these long stretches. You forget to change colors. And change colors to yarn A. You have here 3 trebles. Work 1 treble on each of those. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then change colors to yarn B or C. In the first stitch, going to do 2 trebles. 1, 2, so 2 trebles in that first stitch, and then on the next 11 trebles going to work 1 treble on each. It will bring you almost to the other side. So it's 1, 2, 3, continue until you have 11, 4, and 11. There we go. 11 trebles. Then here in the last stitch, 2 trebles again. So 1, 2, and then we change colors to yarn A. 3 stitches here, work a treble on each of those. So 1, 2, and 3, and then change back to yarn B. Going to work 18 trebles here. That'll bring you to that point, and then on the last stitch we work 2 trebles. So 1 stitch, 1 treble on every stitch. So 1. This should be 18. And there we go. That's 18 trebles. And then here on the last stitch you work 2 trebles. And then change to yarn A. There we go. On the first 2 stitches, work a treble 2 together. And now you're going to work 3 trebles, so that's 1, 2, 3. And the third one is there right in the center. So that's 1, 2, here the third one is here, right in the center, 3. And now you're at the end of the repeat unit. So everything we've just done, you need to do 5 more times. And remember, the repeat unit started with 2 trebles. So the next repeat unit here is going to be 1 treble, 1 treble, and then treble 2 together. And then we change to yarn B. There you go. So I've just started the second repeat with you. So you need to complete 5 more repeats. Here you'll finish with treble 2 together in yarn A, 3 trebles, and then you close on your first stitch here with a slip stitch. Round 34, start with a chain 2. In the first stitch where you're currently in, make a treble. And then over the next 2 stitches a treble 2 together. 2, and then we change colors to yarn B or C. In the first stitch, going to do 2 trebles. So that's 1 and 2. Now over the next 8 stitches work a treble. It's going to bring you here somewhere, and then we'll do another increase. So work 8 trebles. So 1, 2, 3, and 8. 8 trebles. Next stitch work 2 trebles. That's 1 and 2 trebles. Now over the next 15 stitches, it should bring you here, sorry, the next 10 stitches, that should bring you here, work 1 treble on each, so the next 10 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and the last one. It's 10 trebles, and then we change to yarn A. These 3 stitches here, yarn A, work 1 treble on each. So 1, 2, 3, and then we change back to yarn B. The next 15 trebles, that's all of these stitches here, work 1 treble on each. That's nice and easy, so that's 1. Then the last one, that's 15, so 1 on every stitch, and then you change to yarn A. 3 stitches here, work 1 treble on each of those in yarn A. So 1, 2, 3, and then change back to yarn B. Last bit of yarn B is again quite a stretch. We're going to start with 10 stitches and work an increase. It's the reverse of what we did before. So we're going to start with 10 trebles, 1 on every stitch. So that's 1, 2, and 10. 10 trebles. The next stitch, I'm going to work 2 trebles, so here you work an increase. So 1, 2 trebles, and in the next 8, going to work a treble in each, next 8 stitches. And then in the last stitch we work an increase again. 2, 8. Now I've got 8 trebles since the increase, and here in the last stitch work 2 trebles, and then we change colors to yarn A on that second treble. The first 2 stitches are treble 2 together, so 1, 2, and then the next 2 stitches work a treble on each. So that's 1, 2. And now you're at the end of the repeat unit, so you're going to start the next repeat unit, and that starts here immediately with a treble in the next stitch, and then a treble 2 together over those 2 stitches, and then change colors and do all your other trebles as well. So everything we've just done up to this point here, do 5 more times. I just started the repeat with you with that first stitch, and then when you're all the way around, close on your first stitch with yarn A. And also when you're in the end of this round, you can cut yarn B or C, because you're not going to use it in the next round. The next round is only going to be color A. Round 35, last round of this part, and this part you're going to work only with yarn A. So yarn B or C, I've cut it here to the back, I've cut this thread, you can see I've cut it here. Just leave it to the back, I'll work it in later. So only with yarn A this round. And we're just going to be making a nice band circle around our work. Chain 2, this is not a stitch, and then in the same stitch where you already are, you work the first stitch, and this is the first of, wait for it, 34. So you're going to have to work quite a stretch of stitches, and then we'll work an increase. So we're going to work 34 stitches. So this was 3. And now you can just continue, so no changing colors, just nice easy round. Just keep counting. You want 34 trebles. So I'm just going to continue until I have 34. That'll be quite a bit way further, and then I'll just quickly see you there. I've worked 34 trebles, so it's quite a stretch. As you can see, I've got 34 here. And then in the next stitch you work 2 trebles. So 1, and 2. And that's the repeat. You're going to do that 11 more times. So now you'll again work 34 trebles and then work an increase. So work 2 trebles in the next stitch. You're going to do that 11 more times. And when you're all the way around, you're going to work 2 trebles in your last stitch here. And then as such, we're going to close on the first stitch and change yarn colors. I'll just show you what I mean by that when I get there. But for the moment, work 34 trebles and then an increase. So work 2 trebles in the next stitch and do that 11 more times. Now at the end of round 35, and I have to close with a slip stitch now on the first stitch. Now for the pattern, for the next round also we need to do this with yarn D or E if you have color crafter. So that's the color we need to make the slip stitch join with. However, this is the end of part 3 and this is the color that we're going to be starting with in part 4, but I don't want to leave this yarn with just a slip stitch attached for a whole week. So, because what you're supposed to do now is take yarn D and close this with a slip stitch with yarn D and then leave this attached until next week. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to attach it with yarn A, make that slip stitch, and I'm just going to put my stitch marker in here so that nothing happens to that stitch. And then I'm going to start part 4 by just undoing this slip stitch and then connecting yarn D and then taking it from there. So that's purely, I'm purely doing this because it's easier for me not having that slip stitch in there for a whole week while my pattern is just waiting for us to finish and next part to be available. So I'm going to leave it like this for the moment and I'll undo that in part 4. So let's just look at how big our pattern is at the moment. If we look at what we've made this band here in part 3 and it's actually too large for me to get it in front of the camera in full. So where we want to be right now, so this is half the pattern, the same the other side is from this point to the other side, is you want to have 70 centimeters if you have an art tribe and about 78 if you have a color crafter. So I'm just going to measure half. So half should be in at about 35 and I'm in at about 35 and a half. If I'm halfway, if I measure it here, I am exactly 35 if I measure it here. So I've just measured at half, so I've just double checked by doing the full measurement, but that's what you're aiming for, about 70 centimeters on the art tribe, 78 on the color crafter. So this is what your work looks like at the moment, and I must say it's absolutely gorgeous. We're ready for part 4 next week. Hope to see you then.